Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, regarding Varnashram, then it has to be understood, means the basic principle is Varnashram is the structure for human beings to behave within the universe. And the purpose of the universe is to develop one's God consciousness. So Varnashram is actually only meant for devotees, and it's meant to take one from the materialistic platform up to the transcendental platform. So that means it has to be able to cross from the improper understanding to the proper. But what is not the proper point is the actual primary, which is the Krishna consciousness. Who's it for? Who are the results for? What's the actual purpose? While in the material world we take Krishna's energy, we manipulate it, we get the results, we use it for ourselves. In Krishna consciousness, we take the material energy, we manipulate it, we use the results for Krishna. So actually we can see is that the primary point of pleasing Krishna or not doing that and trying to please ourselves. That's the actual point. The secondary, the forms that are used, that's actually not the main point of Varnashram. Just like in cooking, you have to use pots and pans. But cooking's not about the pots and pans. Right? Somebody who's not a cook, then it's about you have this pan, and this spoon, and that oven, and so many different things. Because all they know is names. They don't actually know cooking. You understand?
Yeah.
So, Varnashram is a system that you use as tools, but the goal is to please Krishna. That's why it's called Daiva Varnasrama. But the difficulty is we get caught up on the secondary aspects, the forms, because that's why we come to the material world. The living entity, the nature is to serve God. But because they don't take up that service to God, they take up the aspect of enjoying His energies. So how the energies function to give results so that you can enjoy, it doesn't matter where it is, it's the same process. But because they're using the energies for themselves, they're brought to the material platform. Because in the spiritual platform, they use the laws of His energies to please Krishna. And in the material world, people may use the laws to please Krishna, but they not. But the principle is the laws are the same. Right? Sometimes it's thought that, Varnashram is old, it's archaic, because we're looking at an economic social system which is on the level of prana-moya, which means the level of extended sense gratification, which is actually an atheistic platform. So theism begins at the third level of consciousness, at mana-moya. In that, then, what it is you're bringing your life in line with the laws of nature, the laws of God. So it's theistic. So this idea that these laws of God aren't viable today, because it's called the Yuga and this and that, this is, as Prabhupada would say, a poor fundament of knowledge. Because God's laws never get old. God doesn't get old. He's always present. He's the maintainer, which means the present, which means the mode of goodness. Old means ignorance. Right? So only those in the mode of ignorance will think God's laws don't apply today. So now, if we look at what we're meaning by religion, so Dharma, religion is one thing. Sanatan Dharma, Varnashram Dharma, Daiva Varnashram, they're all the same, they're synonyms of the same concept. So Dharma means the inherent nature you can't change. So the soul, its inherent nature is service. That's not going to change. So it doesn't matter what yuga it is, what planetary system you're on, who you are or who you think you are. That won't change. So that's what Varnashram is. It's simply identifying what is the actual inherent nature of everything in God's creation and how all those things relate to each other so that they can be used to serve the Lord. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the point. So now, if that's understood, then we're only engaged in these laws because we don't know the laws. We think we're the center of attention, and therefore everything should run how we like it, like children. Children don't understand if they fall over they get hurt, and if they poke somebody they get hurt, and they don't understand these things because it's just whatever they feel, that's how it should go. It's only with time they learn. So Varnashram is simply because we don't know God. We don't know His laws. Then Varnashram simply explains them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now the question comes up, why it's not more understood or appreciated, or devotees are trying to apply it. That's because it is centered in the mode of goodness. Right? To function in Varnashram, you actually require the mode of goodness. So that means is you're performing activities because these are the activities that please the Lord. Right? Krishna gives the scriptures. Scriptures are coming from Him. He follows them. That's one of Krishna's 64 qualities. So that means, since it's about pleasing Krishna, this is the method that He follows, that He likes to be pleased with. But it's not about the form, it's about the devotion. But this form, this is the perfect form in the mode of goodness because we're trying to get to pure goodness. So in the spiritual world, they use these forms in pure goodness. But in the material world, generally at best you get goodness. And so then with devotional service, the elements of passion and ignorance that get in the way of our devotion gradually go away so that these lower elements go away. And then we're left with pure goodness. So the Vedic system is perfect because it starts in goodness and brings you to pure goodness. It can also accommodate applying it in passion, that the only reason you're following the rules is because of the material benefit you'll get. But at least you're following the same rules and form that everybody else is. In other words, those who are devotees and those who are not devotees are following the same culture. But their goal, one is focused on the Lord, the other is focused on themselves. This way then it naturally progresses. As you take up devotional service, then gradually we develop that attraction to the Lord. We start giving the results to the Lord, and then we slowly give up the modes of passion and ignorance. And the Vedic system mode of ignorance then is not going to work very well, because someone in the mode of ignorance, they tend to be a separatist. They tend to think their material skills and qualifications are what make them advanced, and that's the forms that show advancement rather than the Lord's pleasure. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And a sense of duty. So then the other obstacle comes up is that this sense of duty that's necessary within the Vedic system is not a popular thing for those in passion and ignorance. Because in passion and ignorance, then I'm doing it because of the benefit I'll get. So the only reason I do it is because I'll get a benefit. And if I don't want the benefit, I don't do it. So this concept of doing something where you don't want the benefit, that's totally foreign to the living entity in the material world. Right? The karmi does it because he'll get the benefit. The jnani doesn't do it because he doesn't want the benefit. But to do it and the benefits for someone else or for Krishna, that's totally a new concept. That's another reason that the Varnashram is hard to understand. Because it's not a socio-economic system. Because it covers dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So devotees maybe deal a little bit with the artha aspect. Okay, you're farming, you're growing some carrots, taking care of a few cows. Okay, haribol. But what about the dharma that's based on? What about the kama, that you engage the senses? What about the moksha, then working on the platform over the soul, not the body? And these are just the material points. Then there's bhakti. So Daiva Varnasrama means you have to consider all five. If we're just using a social system, you only consider one. So going from 1 to 5, that's the difficulty. That's another reason devotees can't relate to it and are not applying it. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Now as this concept on whether you can have Varnashram in the cities, it's a very simple point. Are they following Varnashram in Dwarka? What about Mathura, Ayodhya, Hastinapur, Ujjain? You understand?
Yeah.
In other words, this idea that unless you're out in the village with dirt under your nails growing cabbages, it's not Varnashram. This is the farmer's view of the creation. You understand?
Correct.
Varnashram means that you have mankind. Mankind then is to follow these laws of God. Now, to keep those laws of God intact, to practice them, to teach them, in other words, the caretaker of the laws of God, that's for the Brahmins. So with those laws then is created the Brahmins to take care of them. When the populace is created, then Kshatriyas are created to take care of them. And when cows are created, Vaishyas are then created to take care of them. Right? And then Shudras, they assist the other three. So this idea is that unless you're in the village, it's not Varnashram. That's a very, very basic understanding. Because the point is Varnashram is a lifestyle. It's not where you're living. Right? It's what you're doing with your life. That are you following the Vedic system? Are you following the duties you have in relation to everybody else? Because actually, if you want to be really strict about it, Manu says Brahmins should not farm. They should not farm. Why? Because, one, they should be studying and teaching. That's the essence of their duty. Kshatriyas should be protecting the people. That's the essence of their duty. Vaishyas, they should be taking care of cows and farming. That's the essence of their duty. And Shudras assist. Right? So that means if you have Shudras that are assisting Vaishyas, they'll also be farming. But for Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, generally they wouldn't be. So that means you have that aspect of the Varnashram system, following Varnashram and not farming. So whether they're in the village and studying and teaching, or whether they're in the city and studying and teaching, or whether they're out in the forest. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we have to be able to see it in a greater picture, because we've just taken it as an economic system. And then, why isn't that being established, our farms and this and that? Because basically speaking, probably 99.99% of the devotees are from the city. And who wants to go out into a farm and get mud on their feet? You know what I'm saying? So, because where do all the discussions about Varnashram happen? In the city, at tables, in an air-conditioned room, everybody's sitting behind computers and giving statistics of this and that and so many different things. How many people live out on a farm? You understand?
Yes.
So farmers, then those who are, they can relate to that aspect of it. But other than that, they won't be able to relate. Okay? So, therefore, if Varnashram can't be applied in the city, then that means devotees can't follow it. And since Varnashram Prabhupada did talk about it, it can be applied, that means everybody, no matter where they are. So the difficulty is that you have applying Varnashram in the city and you have applying in the farm. So those who are interested in the farming projects can relate to the farming and all that. They should be involved in those and develop those. But to say that there isn't Varnashram in India, I mean in ISKCON, unless it's in a farm, that's again, as we said, a poor fund of knowledge. Because Krishna lives in Dwarka. Maharaj Ugrasena had, I forget what it is, 10, I think, billion personal bodyguards. That meant the elite corps. And that was just his. Then you have Krishna and everybody else. So you have trillions and trillions of people living in Dwarka. And you're going to tell me they're not following Varnashram because they're not outgrowing cabbages? You understand? So that's the whole point, is by the bodily concept, Vaishyas think if you're not doing Vaishya stuff, then you're not in Varnashram. Kshatriyas think if you're not managing, then it's not Varnashram. Brahmins think, well, if you're not teaching, it's not Varnashram. You understand?
Yeah.
So that's the whole point, is no. Manu states what is Varnashram. And we either accept that, or then why bother? That is the book. You know what I'm saying? Other books support, but that is accepted as the scripture. And Prabhupada quotes from that, he talks Varnashram, so this is the position. You understand? So in other words, if we started to apply Varnashram in the cities, then we'd establish Varnashram, and then gradually, as interest grew, it would start growing into the villages. But when we start in the village, it'll never come to the city, because city people do not want to live in a village. Go to any of our farms, except for one or two here and there. There's a few devotees that are actually living there and everything like that. Everybody else, it's a suburb. They get in their car, drive to the city for their job. So they just live there in the suburb. Does that make sense?
Yes, right.
If without education you don't have human life, right? One's born in human form, and that human form then by training can be made into human life. Human life means Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So what is Brahma? Brahman. So therefore that culture in which you're trying to understand Brahman, that's the Brahminical culture. That's Varnashram. You understand? Varnashram, Brahminical culture, it's the same thing. So without training, then it won't get there. The modern is simply training people in karma, right? Simple, certain knowledge, certain skills, they can do that. Does it train them in guna? What is the mood? What's the behavior? What is the culture? What is the lifestyle? No, there's not one. So without Gurukul, how are they going to learn that? Because as you see, it's been, since Prabhupada established ISKCON, it's been now over 50 years, 51 years now, right? We're coming up on, and still is the question, does Varnashram apply to us? What does that mean? That means that the first generation, without proper training, cannot understand it.
Yeah.
So the Gurukuls are for training that kind of understanding. So in other words, if you don't have Gurukul, basically you won't have Varnashram on a broad scale. You have individuals who will preach on that, then slowly, after some time, you'll establish it. But otherwise, if you train it from the Gurukul, then very quickly, because it's already their lifestyle. Prabhupada, when he talked about managers, the temple presidents, he expected them to run the temples according to Varnashram, because he understood their nature. Now, a question comes up is, okay, we've introduced the Brahminical Varna, because Brahman, the ashram means Brahman. There is no Kshatriya ashram or Vaishya ashram. So Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa, that's Brahminical. Then you have the Brahminical occupation. So 5 out of 8 Prabhupada already established. Some people like to say, oh, Prabhupada didn't establish Varnashram. He did. He just established that part. Then with time now as need, then you need to introduce Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. Now, what does that mean? That means that people have those natures, you engage them according to those natures. You don't have to identify, oh, he's a Kshatriya, he's a Vaishya, he's a Shudra. Because Vaishnavas are Brahmins by understanding, by ashram. But in Varna, then they're not. By Varna, they will be whatever their conditioning is. Does that make sense?
Yes, right.
Yes. But because they're doing it for Krishna, it's the same as Brahminical activities. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the temple president is supposed to see the individual natures of the devotees in their temple. If they're best situated as Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, whether they should be doing the occupational duties of Brahman, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Shudras, and then engage them. But how many temple presidents do that? They just go by what's practical. And practical means it's management. And since it's not based on Dharma, that kind of management means Artha. And so all we do is just follow the bourgeois culture that the West provides us with. And then we say, oh, you can't do Varnashram. Does that make sense? So the point is the ashrams are designated, but the Varnas are not. But the duties are there, and if you're doing Brahminical, you expected to follow those rules. If you're doing Kshatriya, you have to follow those rules. But you don't have to be designated, because we're Vaishnavas. We don't need to do that. But the hierarchy has to be there. You have to know that if you're not managing under the guidance of Shastra, then you're not managing. And if you're making money without guidance of higher authority, then also it's not proper. And if you're using your various skills and other activities, and you're not doing that under high authority, then it's not going to be proper. So there's an order. In other words, knowledge and skills is the lowest. Then the ability in economics is higher than that. Higher than that is administration, where you know how to protect people, not how to push papers. A bureaucrat's a Shudra. A manager can be on any level. An administrator is a Kshatriya. They're very different. So Kshatriya is a leader. A bureaucrat is a guy who sits in the office and just says no. Right? So, and then above that has to be the Brahminical nature. And they have their ways that they're divided. So the Brahmin gives advice, but he's not in control. He doesn't take responsibility, but he doesn't take the credit. The manager, he hears the advice, he makes the decision, he affects it, he gets the glory or he gets the blame. But the thing's not, the Brahmins tell him what to do and he just does it, then he's a Shudra. No, he's independent. They said, he hears, he takes it, he applies it, then it's his responsibility. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cow culture, I'm not sure what that means. So, but in the Brahminical culture, then is go brahmana hitaya cha. That cows, they produce milk. Milk is very essential in human life because it's offerings for Krishna, develops the finer brain tissue. So dairy products are used in sacrifice, right? And then that prasad is then taken, that develops the finer brain tissue. So it's used to please Krishna and then it becomes the prasad. So without cows, how do you have this finer culture? Because Krishna likes the dairy products. Everything you offer him has to have some dairy product in it. So that means, offerings means cows, right? And then Brahminical culture means it's about serving Krishna. So that's why then the cows are so important. It's not other than that. That's the whole point, right? Because they're so essential like that. And so then these are your two main aspects of the Vedic culture, is the cows and the Brahmins. Right? But at the same time, we have to understand the cow is a cow. And so it is in support of the Brahminical culture. It doesn't replace. It's not that we push the Brahmins aside because we got to take care of the cows. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So because of these kind of extremes, that's another reason we can't establish all these things. Right? Connected with that, the importance of vegans. See, the vegan concept, if they're karmis, we're talking karmis here, that they have some interest in some other living entity than themselves and hope for a better position for them, then we could say that's an elevated position. It's better than the regular karmi. But the only difficulty with the vegan is actually none of them care about cows. The cow is just another political thing. Now it's the cows, before it was the blue whales, it's always something. So, because if they cared about cows, that vegan's been around for a while, 10 years or so, why aren't there vegan dairies and vegan dairy products?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So technically it's just a political position to something you feel good about. The cow's dharma is giving milk. That's what they do, as we just discussed. What's the importance of cows? And devotees, they offer this to Krishna. So that's the duty of Brahmins. Now, the duty of the dairy farmer is to protect the cows. That's what Vaishyas are for. So, if the Vaishyas not performing their duty, then you can't say that the cow is not going to do theirs and the Brahmin's not going to do theirs. It just means it's not an ideal situation. Because the point is by not drinking the milk, fine, but how have we saved the cow? Do they leave the cows alone and they're out feral? No, they just send them to the slaughterhouse. So in other words, we have to understand the modern is, the dairy farming is a branch of the meat business. That's all. So unless you stop that, then only you can do. So if we really care, then we will take care of cows and support cows. But what does that mean? That means since we do everything, the Varnashram's on an economic platform, that means we're always looking for the best deal. Now, milk coming from protected cows is going to be more expensive. Plus, to organize it and that, to make kind of co-op systems, and that means management and organization, means commitment. Who wants to do that? So if you really want to know why the cows aren't taken care of and there isn't anything, then it's because no one wants to organize it or pay more. So the easy cop-out is to say you're a vegan. and I support the cows. But what service do they do the cows? Right? Now this is separate from devotees who do take care of cows, have goshalas, take care of them very well, and to try to make awareness for those cows and get their community to support. They take up vegan for if it's not supporting those cows. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm talking. That's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But for the person who's just sitting there in the Govinda's restaurant eating the vegan stuff and then looking at the devotees who are eating the vegetarian and making snide comments, it's just political. They don't really care for cows. Then how are we doing? Okay. Why spend your whole life in something that you can't necessarily have so much effect on? Now, let's say if you want to go in, you get your law degree, you work into different things, then maybe by the time you're in your 30s, 40s, maybe you can get solidly situated in the political field, and maybe when you're in your 50s or 60s, you can have some influence. Okay, so that's 40 years. Now imagine if you spent 40 years with that and how much time they're giving. They'll have to give much time every day, 6, 8, 10 hours a day. Now if you put in half that time preaching to people in the political field, you don't think you get much more effect? So Prabhupada's point was, we don't have to become engineers. We preach to engineers. They're already an engineer. Then all you have to do is make them a devotee. So why become a politician? We're preachers. We just make, if there is somebody who's a politician to become a devotee, of course they'll use it in Krishna service. But we don't become like that. It means what is your nature, you use that in Krishna service. And then your final part, no, that's as far as we can get.
That's all, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.